Welcome to Five Rivers Podcast from Heald. Here's a stat that should stop you in your tracks. More than 68% of people aged 65 or older with diabetes will die from heart disease. Think about that for a minute. That means for most people living with type 2 diabetes, the real threat may not be their blood sugar, it's their heart. And the scariest part, most don't even know about it. This is why I'm so glad to have Valerie Bachinsky with us today. She's a registered nurse, coach, and founder of Nurse Guided Wellness. She's helped hundreds of people better understand the silent, often deadly connection between metabolic dysfunction and cardiovascular risk. In today's episode, we will unpack the science, the misconceptions, and most importantly, the real life changes that can help you, your heart, and your blood sugar. Welcome to the discussion, Valerie.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, more than 68% of adults with diabetes will die from heart disease. So, if you're living with type 2 diabetes, you're already living with serious cardiovascular risk, whether you know it or not. Valerie, let's start with the foundation then. How are type 2 diabetes and cardiovascular disease connected biologically?
Okay, so they are deeply connected, and most of it stems from the insulin resistance. So when the body becomes resistant to insulin, the blood sugar rises, and the pancreas starts pumping out more insulin, and this creates a metabolic resistance. And a metabolic imbalance. And this, one of the big things that this leads to is chronic systemic inflammation. And this chronic systemic inflammation, it damages the body in many, many ways, beyond heart disease. But, when it comes to the heart, what it does is it's damaging the blood vessels of the heart from the inside out. And it also accelerates that buildup of plaque that's known as atherosclerosis. It also causes damage to the blood vessels called endothelial dysfunction, which impairs primarily it impairs the blood vessels' ability to dilate and regulate blood pressure, but it also impairs it from preventing clotting. So it makes it more likely that those clots are going to build up on the walls of the arteries. It also affects the lipid or the cholesterol balance and can lead to high triglycerides, which is a major risk factor for heart disease. Low HDL, which is the good cholesterol, and it also promotes the formation of these more dense LDL cholesterol. Now, LDL is the bad cholesterol, but this makes the bad cholesterol even worse. So this, again, increases the risk of cardiovascular disease.
Got it. So why do you feel that so many people that don't realize that their heart is at risk too when thinking about diabetes?
So I think quite simply they're not told. This information isn't transferred from doctors to patients, our healthcare system. And I know this is probably going out all over the world, but in the United States anyway, our healthcare system really is not set up to give doctors the time to educate patients. And then there's also just this lack of awareness about type 2 diabetes. People think it's all about managing the sugar, getting the sugar down, getting that A1C down. But, it can double to quadruple the risk of heart attack and stroke. And it builds up, and these symptoms aren't usually seen until significant damage has already been done, especially in people with diabetes, because often with diabetes, there's this nerve damage happens, and people can have, usually when someone has the heart muscle isn't getting enough oxygen, they can feel that, they can have chest pain. But someone who has diabetes might not have that chest pain. I actually have a friend who had a heart attack and he had type 2 diabetes, and he didn't even know until his annual physical, and it shows up on the EKG. So they don't have that classic chest pain experience when their heart muscle isn't getting enough blood. And again, like I said, often the main focus in diabetes is this A1C and managing the blood pressure, managing the blood glucose. But other factors like the lipids and the blood pressure, the insulin resistance, all this leads to increased heart risk. So even though the blood sugars might be getting managed and the A1C might be, where they want it, there's still this increased risk, and it's because of that other metabolic dysfunction.
So you obviously you have worked with hundreds of clients. You've got many people that you work with. You refer to one of your friends as well. I'm just curious, how do people react when either you or when they have a scary situation and they find out like, oh gosh, it was the correlation between diabetes and cardiovascular. What is that sort of aha moment? What does that look like? Yeah, just curious.
Well, it depends on the person. Um, I worked in cardiac surgery for
Hmm.
years, cardiac catheterization for a year. And a lot of people, they had no idea. And I
Mm,
also think our understanding of it was a little bit less back then. A lot of people didn't even realize that they had
mm,
diabetes until they had this they come in because they have a heart attack or they have a blockage, and they come in emergently, and basically their lives are saved by
mm.
a heart surgery or a cardiac catheterization. And then, oh, well, do you know you have diabetes? And
Yeah,
they did not know that. It doesn't. I work with a lot of people with the lipoprotein A, so this is one of my main things. So this is another type of cholesterol. Um, and it's odd. It's funny because what I see with the lipoprotein A is I see people discover that they have this, but for some reason it creates more of an urgency than when
mm,
someone finds out that they have type 2 diabetes. People find out they have an inherited risk, and they want to do everything to fix that.
yeah,
But you don't see the same thing with type 2 diabetes, which is bewildering to me because it does kind of increase the risk the same amount.
yeah.
And then having both um, amplifies that risk even more.
Yeah, agreed,
Um,
agreed. Well, I think so. At the end of the day, at least the good news is that if you're managing diabetes, hopefully effectively, you're already managing your heart at the same time, whether you
yes.
realize it or not. So that's sort of a good takeaway or good, I guess, silver lining, if you will, that hey, if you're managing one effectively, you're gonna be able to manage the other one much better as well.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the point about lifestyle, right? Lifestyle fixes. And here's a stat that I found very very interesting, and there's a reason why I'm standing right now as I'm talking with you as well, is that sitting for more than 6 hours a day, 8 to 9 hours with no breaks, which is very common for a lot of folks, especially the ones that have office jobs and things like that, the so-called white collar jobs, if you will,
Mhm.
that no movement break within that time frame is associated with up to 34% high risk of heart disease and 16 to 19% higher risk of death overall, even if you exercise later. And when I saw this stat, honestly, it was a very powerful reminder of the small daily habits that most people don't think about, that we just not necessarily ignore on purpose, but it's not built into us. It's not the something that we are reacting to or thinking about on a regular basis. So from your perspective as a nurse and a coach to a lot of these individuals or those folks that work with you, what are some of the lesser known lifestyle factors, habits, if you will, that raise both diabetes as well as the heart disease risk that you commonly see?
Okay. So a big one. So you're right. Sitting is for prolonged
Yeah.
periods is a big one. One of the sayings that's out there now is sitting is the new smoking.
Mm,
And it really, that prolonged sitting all day without getting up regularly and
mm,
moving around can, increases the risk of heart disease, of diabetes, and also many other, chronic diseases. But another big one I think that comes, probably a lot from work is this chronic stress.
mm,
So, this raises cortisol, which raises blood sugar, it raises blood pressure. It drives the accumulation of this visceral fat,
mm.
which is this fat that is around the organs that greatly increases heart disease risk and risk for diabetes and metabolic dysfunction. So, just like you want to get up and move and not sit constantly.
Mhm.
You also want to take like little breaks to interrupt that stress. So, maybe couple that standing with a few deep
Yeah.
breaths so that you're bringing down that cortisol level and interrupting that chronic stress cycle. Um, Another thing is poor sleep, and this is another huge thing that gets put on the back burner. Um, People give up sleep. They give it up to get more work done.
Yeah.
They get it up to binge watch their favorite TV show. Sleep is just not prioritized enough. And, there's this cultural thing about sleep where if you sleep too much, you're lazy and, you got to get up early in the morning and get, the 4 a.m. wake up
Yeah.
routine. But sleep is so important.
Yeah.
A lack of sleep it increases insulin
Mhm.
resistance. It leads to appetite dysregulation. So we eat more because we're tired, and then we also crave these sugary, fatty foods that somewhere in our biology we think that this can replace sleep when
Mm,
in actuality it really doesn't.
mm.
Poor sleep also raises the blood pressure and the inflammatory markers that are also these, increases risk for heart disease and diabetes. And, there's studies that show, you know, that the lack of sleep definitely leads to a higher risk of both type 2 diabetes and heart disease.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that. We have, I mean, obviously, science backs all the claims that you were just making. There's enough data behind it as well to prove that. And what we see on a regular basis, obviously, because we're in a unique position to be able to track data on sleep quality, for example, right? The deep to REM ratio, the how many times did somebody wake up, or
Mhm.
the movement based on the fitness trackers, and any sort of devices that we can use to get that data from. We constantly see this, that the poor sleep quality is in a lot of ways related to stress, i.e., and also heart rate variability. And we see the blood glucose spikes that are very abrupt because of that. And again, that the people are then going over to comfort foods, right? Oh, I'm just going to go have some ice cream because I can't sleep right now.
Yep.
And I'm going to go watch that episode of, my favorite show on Netflix. And the next thing you know, it's 2 hours later and you've
Mhm.
completely
Yeah.
disrupted the
Or
sleep
scrolling on
cycle.
the phone.
Yeah, yeah, and again, the studies that say that, hey, just a one night disturbance in sleep pattern can cause the damage for the next few days, as long as, or when you're trying to recover back from that sleep deficit, if you will, or quality sleep. So it's very interesting how the biology and the mind working together, and something as ignored as sleep, like you talked about, right? As a culture, we take pride in, hey, man, I stayed up
Yep.
till late. I woke up early. Well, did you really accomplish something outside of just harming your body at that point, right? So
Mhm.
there's
Very
this
true.
there's this paradox that people have to understand, that there's a fine balance to be had.